You're listening to the Real Estate Proverbs Podcast with host Kevin Jefferson. This is the number one podcast for African American real estate professionals who are doing extraordinary things. It's time to tune in. And now, your host, the People's Lender, Kevin Jefferson.
Welcome to the Real Estate Proverbs Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Jefferson, and today we have a special guest for our first episode, Trina Joyner. How you doing, Trina?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. So Trina and I have known each other for about 17 years. Trina and her family moved to Seaford, Delaware, and they did something that I had never seen before when I was in Delaware. They were actually, her and her husband were the first African-American real estate agents that I knew of in our county. And that intrigued me a lot. I happened to be at work and they had received their license and they were in the newspaper. So I was looking through the newspaper and I said, oh, somebody who looks like me that's in real estate. So from that point, it was kind of the buzzword. I'm not sure if you even knew. So, hey, do you know the Joyners are in real estate and where do they come from? So maybe a year later, I decided to get into real estate. And to be perfectly honest, Trina and her husband, Rodney, were an integral part in my real estate career from the start. So Trina, tell us a little bit about your journey from, Atlanta up to Delaware and why real estate in a place where no one like you, who looked like you, was in the industry.
Well, so the journey from Atlanta, at the time we had moved from Fayetteville, Georgia, and we were already in that entrepreneur state where we were running a sports collectible business down in Peachtree City. So when we decided to go back north, prior to that, we had actually signed up for a class in Georgia. It just so happens that when we landed in Seaford, that it was the same class volume, same books, the whole 9 yards. And so the journey there, at the time, we hadn't even noticed that we were the only ones or probably the first at that time. Seaford, as you know, you grew up, there's a small town. And so once we decided to take the class, we moved there. There was a class that fall, made it through that, took the test, got our license, and never looked back. And at that point, we came to the realization that we were probably the first in Southern Delaware at that time.
Yeah. So it's that been about 18 years?
Well, 18 years as a resident, 17 years licensed, and licensed in both Delaware and the state of Maryland.
Awesome. So take me through your journey of getting started in the business, in terms of after you received your license and the company you were with, as well as how you guys were able to get started in your real estate journey.
Okay. So going through that process, we actually ended up joining the company with who at the time was our realtor that helped us purchasing the home that we still live in. And so his name is Frank Parks, as you well know. And so Frank had just started his company at that time when we got our license back in 2003. And so we decided to join Frank's office. It was just the environment, having a new company. He was young. We were new to the area. We knew absolutely no one. So we figured we could only go up from there. So the biggest challenge we had was everybody knew everybody there. So in most circumstances, you're thinking, well, how in the world are we going to make it through this business when we literally knew no one. But we did. We built our clientele. We dug right in, got to know the community, built our business. Within the first 3 years, I went ahead and got my Maryland license because of our connections in the state of Maryland. So this way I could have the best of both worlds. We just built that team effect. When we first started out, Rodney and I were both doing residential real estate, and then he kind of spun off into commercial real estate. And then we also got into rentals. So we were trying to cover the bases and looking at how to fill the need or the void, so to speak, of what that community needed. And we felt like we were doing that.
Wow. So let's so of course, you know, your husband and wife team,
Hmm.
you yourself and Rodney,
Hmm.
that was also a first for me to see. You know, a team. I think there might have been one other team, but they weren't in the Seaford area.
Hmm.
So a husband and wife team and a team concept was kind of new around, well, it definitely in our area.
Yeah.
While at the time I wasn't in real estate, I always paid attention to what was going on, obviously, because we're in a small area. And
Yeah.
then I had, you know, I was interested in real estate. So, in terms of the team concept, how was that structured? Or who was more so the listing agent and who was more
Mhm.
so the buyer's agent?
So we've always had a really good team effect work as far as working in relationships. So we decided Rodney was the stronger. He loved listings. His thing was get the listings, get the listings. I love working with the buyers. So taking on that hands-on approach, I like the thrill of starting that navigation from the beginning of the process, following it all the way through to the end. He refers to it more so as hand holding, which I don't have a problem with doing that. So it's very time consuming, but it was the fun part of it is knowing that you are making a difference, which actually has an impact on that building that relationship with that client and actually getting to know them and seeing that you are meeting those goals.
Wow, that's awesome. Um, So to me, you know, while I've seen 16 of your 17-year career,
Hmm.
um, you have been able to break barriers that no one else has in terms of, and I, since you haven't seen it, and you know, of course, I'm removed from the area.
Hmm.
You were actually the first African American president of SCORE, Sussex
Yeah.
County Association of Realtors, that I
Hmm.
saw, and to
And
this date, I think you still are.
that's
What
correct.
made you? What were your aspirations of doing that? Were those your aspirations after a while in the business, or did it just kind of happen?
A little bit of both. So once I started volunteering and getting a chance to learn the different aspects of the importance of volunteering and getting more involved in the association, which it helps your business because you're learning a little more of the industry from the background versus it's sort of being on the front lines, but learn it from inside. And once you start seeing um, the differences that you can make, not only as an individual, but perhaps inspire someone else that would normally volunteer, that it is possible to make a difference in different aspects of your career or just in general.
Wow.
So once actually moving up through those little channels of the different committees and having that opportunity to actually, again, at the time, not realizing that I was the only one in Sussex County, not necessarily the first in the state,
Right.
but for Southern Delaware. That was, and it still remains on record, and I'm still the first one.
Wow. Um, so, as president of the Real Estate Association at the time,
Mhm.
um, what was your goal in terms of changes that you wanted to make, and were you successful in making those changes?
Yes. So at that time, that was back in 2012. So one of the things that we accomplished was changing our MLS system to include or add rentals. It didn't happen immediately, but we had to build the foundation and put the tools in place because at that time, so as you know, with our industry or with that with this area, there's two different rental markets. So you have the beach, the resort rentals, and then you have your traditional yearly annual rentals. And so the beach rental areas are handled totally different than your typical yearly lease. But the general public was not able to find our rentals unless they were aware of how to get in touch with an agent, or they had to know about the local companies. If you were moving to the area, there was nowhere that anyone could go and find you if you were in the rental industry. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges. No matter what your role is, you're going to have someone's going to test you no matter what you do. But that was probably the biggest thing during that time, is getting the agents to understand the benefits of it. And now it is a thriving part of our MLS system.
Wow. So 2012 was the year that you were president.
Yes.
And as we most know that, so Trina, when you were president, it was 2012. And at that time, that was the beginning of the end of the real estate recession as we knew it. I think the worst part of it. I think from 2008 to 2011 into 12, we saw a lot of changes in the market that none of us had ever seen. Were there things in place, or that you looked to put in place as president to kind of help change things in the market, or was that something that wasn't able to be controlled at a local level?
Well, on the local level, we actually were able to, prior to me becoming president, we were already working on programs where between our local association and the state association, and combining it with the national association, we had already been working on different programs and tools that could be used to help offset some of the foreclosures that were rampant. There was also, if you weren't able to do short sales, then you had to try to at least do deed in lieu. So we had programs that were put in place at that time where we were actually helping people with mediation, saving their homes from going through foreclosure, or actually finding funds to help people to help with down payment. And a lot of first-time home buyer programs that were good at that time. We were also able to get first-time home buyer exemptions. We were still trying to make sure we kept the flood insurance available in this area, which is well needed. So those things we were able to keep as a vital portion of the industry, which is still being used today.
Right. I remember sitting in some of those neighborhood stabilization meetings with you,
Yes.
just trying to figure out what were the best ways to utilize the funds and to use them up before they went away.
Yes.
Yeah, utilize
And I
before they
think
went
that
away.
And that last phase of it, it was census tract. So that was kind of towards the end of it, kind of phasing itself out. So now we still have the first-time homebuyer programs, which are not used as much as it was back then, but we have seen a substantial drop in foreclosures. Although, as we all know, with you being in the mortgage industry, that we're all preparing for that flood of inventory to hit again once this pandemic lifts up a little more.
Got you. So, in terms of the pandemic and all that we have going on right now, and the way the market is going, what, and I know you don't know at all, but what things are you putting in place now to help yourself in terms of being in a better position as a realtor, to not have your business affected the way all of our business got affected back in 2007 and 8? Mine dropped 50%. So, like, a lot of people right now, we're not seeing a lot of foreclosures
Hmm.
because of the not being able to evict people and foreclose on people until January 1st of 2020.
Right.
But what are your thoughts on when that is that, I guess, that guideline is lifted? What do you think is going to happen with the market?
Well, surprisingly, right now it's been a strong seller's market, and what has helped at least my business is having the service of a rental market. So that actually has been extremely busy, even though we do have this pandemic. But we have a shortage, just like we have a housing short. If you're going to purchase, so what has helped is having that ability to do both sales and rentals. There's going to be there is going to be an influx of people that will be able to take advantage of the foreclosures when they're able to hit it again. The best thing to do now is to just keep teaching people to prepare and to try to stay in touch with what's going on with the trends, with the changes in the mortgage industry, and just educate them. Just keep educating buyers as much as possible.
Right. So in terms of the rental market, are you seeing that current rents are about the same as mortgages?
Higher, in some cases, higher.
Higher,
Yeah, yeah,
higher.
yeah.
Yeah, I see the same thing. Um, in terms of what, in terms of the rental market in itself, do you have a system or a game plan to convert those renters to homeowners, or do you keep them separate?
To avoid any conflict of interest, I try to keep it separate as much as possible. However, that is my client. I'm fortunate enough to have a client that is open to me exercising that ability of my business.
Right.
But for the most part, I keep it separate.
Got you. Got you. So, with your experience and, 18 years is 17 years, going on 18 is
Hmm.
a long time in any industry.
Hmm.
If you had any words of advice for a new real estate agent, things that you would do differently to your business that you saw years down the road, what would be two pieces of advice you would give them?
I would say continue to make sure that you have a cushion for the downside, and instant gratification is not this business, not
Right.
typically. Of course, every market is different, but I would say for them to build the relationships as much as possible and just be consistent and patient.
Gotcha. In terms of them being involved, because something
Hmm.
that I know for sure is that you're heavily involved at the local level, at
Hmm.
state level, and if I'm not mistaken, you've done something at the national level for real estate associations.
Hmm.
How important is that to you, and what do you think? How do you think that affects agents in terms of their business or just them making changes in their industry?
It's extremely important because you're actually a, a connection. You're the nucleus between your community and your business. And being involved with those different organizations or channels, not only are you learning more about the needs of your community, you're able to get those things to make a difference to better someone else's life
Right,
or have
right,
things in place that will actually make a difference for the community.
right. Um, so with that being said,
Mhm.
what are your, anything you have on the horizon in terms of your real estate business? Or will we see a Joyner Realty anytime soon? See any Joyner
That
mentorships? Or,
that's well,
uh,
uh, well, there's always a possibility. I won't say that it won't happen, but when we first initially started out on this venture, the goal was to at some point have the key to opening my own doors to an office. I think that probably the most probably a little on a shorter term would be I do have my associate broker's license with the state of Delaware, so the next thing would be adding on the Maryland broker's license. And then that would be another step towards that at some point, having that Joyner name above the door as broker of record.
Awesome. Awesome. If there's someone listening to this podcast and they wanted to reach out to you and kind of get some information from you, get some insight, and speak with you, how can you be reached?
Anytime they can call my cell. If you can't reach me by phone, feel free to text. My cell phone is 302-745-3840, or feel free to send me an email. My email address, tjoyner, Joyner, at cbanker.com. That's C as in Charlie, Banker.
Awesome. What about your social media?
My social media, I'm just Trina Joyner Realtor on Facebook, on Twitter. It's at Joyner Team 2.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Trina, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time, and I'm sure this won't be the last time you're on here.
Good to see you as always.
Good to
Thank
see you.
you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye.